6. I want to share with you the story of Shua the shepherd. Like his brothers and cousins and uncles, Shua did his shepherding just outside the town of Bethlehem in the land of Israel. Along with these other family members and some hired hands, he was responsible for special sheep that would be used at the temple in Jerusalem, which was about 6 miles away. But on this night, Shua was not thinking about his sheep or the importance of his job. As he sat on a large rock near the top of the hill, some distance away from his partners, he thought about all the bad news in his life. There was the bad news of working yet another night in cold darkness. There was the bad news that his people were still under the thumb of foreigners, the Romans. There was the bad news of tensions with local farmers, sickness in the flock, and divisions within his family. On top of this, there was the bad news of an ailing grandmother and a sister who had recently died in childbirth. In addition to these things, there was the bad news of his own condition. The restlessness of his heart had gotten worse, and others were being affected by his alternating sadness and anger, by his feelings of hopelessness and frustration. At times, he felt like it was all too much. And then there was the bad news about God. Where was he? Didn't he care about the suffering of his people, about the occupation of their land, about the injustice and poverty and sickness among his people, about the despair all around him? Why had it been so long since God had sent a prophet? Shua felt that same despair and confusion. Had God given up on them, on him? As he wrestled with all this bad news, he felt his faith slipping away and the night growing even colder. But suddenly, a warm shaft of light seemed to tear open the sky. Shua fell back and squinted, trying to discover the source of the brightness. Soon he began to make out what seemed to be a figure in the sky. Could this be an angel? A messenger of God? His guess was confirmed when the glorious figure announced what had to be a divine message. Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news. Good news. Good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger. After this, the sky seemed to tear open all around him, and hundreds of other angels appeared in that same heavenly light. When the darkness and the stars finally returned, Shua realized he was no longer wrestling with all the bad news in his life. This stunning and unexpected revelation of good news became his only focus. And when he finally went with his brothers and cousins and uncles and even the hired men, when they finally went into the town, when they finally saw that baby, the long-awaited Messiah, Shua knew that this good news would change everything. Not simply for his people, but beginning with his own once heavy heart. Though most of you already know this, it's still important to point out that the story of Shua the shepherd is not a true story. It's not a true story, at least not in the way that we often think about that label. Yes, there were Christmas shepherds according to the New Testament, but the only thing that we know about them is what the Gospel of Luke tells us. And in that account, none of them are named, nor do we hear about their personal struggles. But if they were human beings like you and me, and they were, then we can't be too far afield, with a character like Shua. There is no doubt in my mind that those actual historical shepherds in that field, that they struggled with the bad news of life. In the same way, there is no doubt in my mind that, like me, you struggle as well. How could we not? How could we not in a world filled with such bad news, about which we are more informed than any other people living at any other time in human history? Like the shepherd in my fictional story, maybe this Christmas you also feel the heaviness of the distress, the desperation, the division, the disease, the death all around us. Or maybe what is most pressing for you is the bad news of something far more personal. Personal loss, personal struggle, personal tragedy. Whatever that bad news is, and however heavy it feels tonight, please know that there continues to be a stunning and unexpected revelation of good news. A stunning and unexpected revelation of good news, of a divine message that has and can change everything, including you. For behold, I bring you good news of a great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day that we celebrate in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. Luke chapter 2, verses 10 and 11. The ultimate source of our bad news, all of our bad news, is the bad news of our broken relationship with God, the God who created us. That's the ultimate source of all your bad news and mine. How was that relationship broken? By our foolish notion that we can play God over our own lives. That life is first about me and my happiness. And that God exists for me, not the other way around. Wonderfully, Jesus came to change all of that. to deal with that sin once and for all. Through his birth and life and death and resurrection from the dead, he proved himself to be exactly who the angel said he was. The Savior, the Lord. This Christmas, I pray that you would truly believe, that you would truly embrace this good-est of all good news, the very goodest of all good news, or that maybe you would rediscover its power to loosen the grip of the bad news that we know all too well. So be encouraged, friends. Be encouraged as you hear that angelic message with new ears. Let its light, let his light pierce your darkness just as it did that cold darkness long ago.